What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Welcome back. And in today's video, we have part 2 of our fantasy football sleepers for the 2022 fantasy and NFL season. Now, if you didn't see the last video, we went through every NFC team, all 16 of them, and we chose one sleeper from each team. Today, we're going to be going through the 16 AFC teams. Now, again, if you didn't see last video, a couple things to keep in mind. One is that this is based on a half PPR league, not full, not standard, half PPR. The second is, in my definition of a sleeper that I've come up with, is any player that is current ADP is being drafted after the 11th round in a 12-team league. So essentially, if your ADP is higher than 132, then you can qualify as a sleeper. If it is 132 or lower, you cannot qualify as a sleeper. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using fantasy calculators, ADP, and what they do is they look at thousands of drafts in the last week or 5 days or so, and that's how they rank their ADP. I think it's a little more accurate because other ADPs will encompass all drafts that have happened since whenever drafts start, March, April, May, and a lot changes, For example, like I used in the last video, Dameon Pierce. 2-3 weeks ago, you could get super late in drafts. Now, he's probably going to be a 7th round pick or something like that. So that's the ADP that I'm using. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Our fantasy sleepers for each team in the AFC. We are kicking things off with the Baltimore Ravens. And our sleeper for the Ravens is running back Mike Davis. Now, I know a lot of you got burned by Mike Davis last year, but, he was being drafted in that running back dead zone of the 5th, 6th round, maybe even a little higher. This year, you can get him past the 12th round. And if you look at the current depth chart, you see that Mike Davis is second, with Gus Edwards not going to be ready to play in the beginning of the season, and we're still not even sure if J.K. Dobbins is going to be fully back. Mike Davis is definitely a sleeper. He's going to be fantasy worthy. Even if J.K. Dobbins is back, the Ravens always like to use multiple running backs, and they are a running team, so go draft Mike Davis. And don't worry about his age too much. Remember last year that Devontae Freeman, who was older than Mike Davis, I believe, last year, was a viable fantasy running back, finished 32nd in half PPR leagues, and had some startable weeks. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills, and my sleeper for the Bills is wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie, and I love Isaiah McKenzie this year because he has value with or without an injury. A lot of sleepers require injuries to be relevant. That's not the case for Isaiah McKenzie. McKenzie should start in the slot. He should beat out Jamison Crowder for the slot position, and you guys know how good Cole Beasley was the last couple of years, and in 2020 he finishes wide receiver 26. That is huge value for a player being drafted in the 12th round or after. Moving right along, we get into the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were a tough one because all their players that are going to be fantasy relevant are not considered sleepers. Mixon, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, all these guys are being drafted before the 12th round. So I just decided to go with tight end Hayden Hurst. He is filling in CJ Uzomah, who had a decent year last year, at least maybe a week or two where he was startable. So my sleeper is Hayden Hurst. Maybe we'll see an increase in the tight end position for the Bengals. And now we go to the other Ohio team, the Cleveland Browns, and my sleeper for the Browns is tight end David Njoku, who got a big contract and is finally going to be the main tight end in Cleveland. Now, I know that Jacoby Brissett is going to start most of the fantasy regular season, and he's kind of fantasy poison, but the one position that does have a chance to be good with Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback is the tight end position. If we look at one of Brissett's years in which he started majority of the year, Jack Doyle finished as tight end 8. And now we get into the Denver Broncos. And my sleeper for them is wide receiver KJ Hamler. I chose Hamler because he is the wide receiver 3 on a potentially really good offense. Unlike other wide receiver 3s, I don't think he has much value without an injury. But if something happens to Sutton or Judy, I think Hamler has a chance to put up some fantasy relevant weeks. Now we get into the Houston Texans, and my sleeper for the Texans is wide receiver Nico Collins, and I'm still shocked to see that you can kind of pick up Collins potentially in the last pick of your draft. One of the things that Collins has going for him is that he's going to be wide receiver 2 on the Texans and someone has to put up points. It's not all going to go to Brandon Cooks. Collins has had a pretty good offseason. He's been hyped up by the coaches, and Davis Mills seems to like him. So why not take a young player with the last pick in your draft? And moving right along, we get into the Indianapolis Colts. And my sleeper for the Colts is rookie receiver Alec Pierce. You can use the Nico Collins logic with Alex Pierce. Someone has to produce outside of Michael Pittman Jr. Then why not Alex Pierce? He's on a better team with a better quarterback than the Texans. They drafted him in the second round, so they think highly of him. Someone else has to produce. Why not take a chance on the young receiver Alec Pierce? And now we get into the Jacksonville Jaguars. My sleeper for them is tight end Evan Ingram. Now, a lot of my sleepers will be tight ends just because if you hit on one late in the round, you save a high draft pick going for one of the big guys, and you still get a big producer at the tight end position. Now, I know it seems like ages ago, but Evan Ingram did put up a top 5 tight end season his rookie year in 2017. And Trevor Lawrence showed that with Dan Arnold or James O'Shaughnessy, he threw to the tight end a lot. Young quarterbacks will do that. They'll go with the safe option. So why can't that be Evan Ingram to put up a top 10 tight end season this year? And also, Doug Peterson likes to feature tight ends in his offenses like Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert. And next, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. And my sleeper for the Chiefs is wide receiver Mecole Hardman. And I think I'm a little shocked to see Hardman going so low. Hardman is currently listed on third on the depth chart, and he's the only receiver really coming back that has any kind of rapport with Patrick Mahomes. And he's playing behind Juju Smith-Schuster and MVS. You know, Schuster has these knee problems, and Mecole Hardman could be the main wide receiver target for Mahomes and for a really good quarterback. So why not take a shot on him? And staying in the same division, we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and my sleeper for the Raiders is rookie running back Zamir White. And I get the feeling that by the end of all these drafts, that he's going to be someone that you have to take higher outside of the qualifications for sleepers. With the team basically going to cut Kenyon Drake, it comes down to Zamir White is the running back behind Josh Jacobs, and the team doesn't really feel that great about Josh Jacobs. A lot of things coming out where you're not very comfortable with Jacobs, and you can see Zamir White taking over that Jacobs role this year with a new coaching staff. And again, staying in the division, we move on to the Los Angeles Chargers, and my sleeper for the Chargers is second-year receiver Joshua Palmer. I really, really like Palmer, just like I like KJ Osborne. He's the wide receiver 3 on a really, really good offense, and he's playing behind someone who's getting old in age in Keenan Allen, and you can see him maybe injury starting to plague his career a little bit. And we saw last year in some games where Josh Palmer, when one of the others receivers were injured, that Palmer did pretty well. You know, he had games where he had 7, 6, 5, 9 targets, especially near the end of the year. But unlike KJ Osborne, I do think that Joshua Palmer needs an injury in order to be fantasy relevant. And next up, we have the Miami Dolphins, and my sleeper for the Dolphins is quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I'll admit this one was more due to kind of all the other players, Tyreek Hill, Waddle, Edmonds, and they're all kind of going quite high. I chose Tua because I think he's the perfect kind of sleeper quarterback. If you want to wait on quarterback until the end of the rounds and not spend a high pick on one, you know, grabbing someone like Tua along with someone else is a really, really good choice. I think he has a lot of potential this year. He has all the weapons he needs. He could be a good fantasy quarterback this year. Staying in the AFC East, we have the New England Patriots, and my sleeper for the Patriots is tight end Hunter Henry, and I'm a little shocked to see Henry going so late in drafts. I know he's a little touchdown dependent tight end, but if you don't have one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends, you basically want a tight end who scores touchdowns, and that's what Hunter Henry does. In years where he's healthy, Henry's pretty consistent. He's going to give you 50 or 60 catches, 600 yards, and, you know, potential of scoring, like last year, 9 touchdowns. And Henry was a top 10 tight end in half PPR leagues last year. We know the Patriots like to use their tight ends. He's the perfect tight end to just wait on tight ends. Don't spend a high pick on one. Grab Henry at the end of your draft, and you have a quality number 1 tight end. And we got yet another AFC East team. We have the New York Jets, and my sleeper for the Jets is wide receiver Corey Davis. And I think we forget about Corey Davis sometimes. Remember, just in 2020, Corey Davis was almost a top 30 receiver in half PPR leagues. And again, he was a top 35 receiver the first 6 weeks of last year. So they paid him a lot of money. He's going to be in play And he could be the favorite target for Zach Wilson or Joe Flacco, Mike White, whoever's going to start for the Jets. And moving right along, we come to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and my sleeper for the Steelers is quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. You know, Trubisky did have a top 15 year in 2018, and he's on an overall better team. He's no longer on the Bears. He's on a team with a lot of weapons. So the fact that he can run and he has a lot of weapons, he could be a decent spot starter in your fantasy leagues this year. And we got our last team on the list, the Tennessee Titans. And my sleeper for the Titans is running back Dontrell Hilliard. All the reports say that Dontrell Hilliard is going to be the handcuff, the second string running back behind Derrick Henry. And with Henry getting hurt last year, getting up there in age, I think it's important to grab him. He should be rostered. We saw last year that even if Henry goes down, the Titans are going to run the ball. And that's why Deontay Foreman was putting up a running back 2 type of season in the weeks that Henry was out. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope 1 or 2 of these sleepers help you win your fantasy leagues this year. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and also leave a comment. Tell me who your sleepers are, if you agree or disagree with me, and who's your number 1 or number 2 sleeper going into this season. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.